Neediness, on the other hand, is a request that's made in such a way that communicates you assume he cannot accomplish the task. I'm the only one who does any work around here. I need to get dinner done, but I know you're not going to help me. I've got to do everything by myself. I always have to do everything by myself. That is still a request and a cry for help, but it is a request with the assumption that he will fall short and not be able to assist you in the way that you need to be assisted. Communicate to your husband from the position of, I know he can and will do it. And we're going to make requests from a standpoint of faith, first in the Lord, secondly in our husband, as opposed to a request laced with doubt. Even God doesn't like receiving requests from us with doubt. The Lord doesn't like that. Hey everybody, it's Busy Mark and I am back with another video, but before we begin, I am pleased to announce that The Modest Fitting has officially launched a women's clothing boutique offering skirts and dresses that embody modesty, femininity, and beauty. To learn more about dresses like this one and others available for purchase, head over to themodestfitting.com. But without further ado, let's begin. All right, I am back with the next installment of the book review that I'm doing on Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and in this chapter, I'm looking at chapter 4. And it's titled How to Motivate the Opposite Sex. I'm not going to go over everything that's in this chapter because there were just a few things that really stood out to me and that I thought were worth mentioning. One of the most I'm going to read the sentence. Men are motivated and empowered when they feel needed. When a man does not feel needed in a relationship, he gradually becomes passive, less energized, and with each passing day gives less and less to the relationship. On the other hand, when he feels trusted to do his best to fulfill her needs and appreciated for his efforts, he is empowered and has more to give. I thought that this was interesting. I'm sure that it's something that we've heard a lot, that men like to feel or need to feel needed. This was certainly addressed in The Proper Care and Feeding of Husbands, which I'm probably going to reference for all time because it was such a good book. But anyway, he also was reviewing how men need to feel needed. And it reminded me of a short that I watched actually several months ago. It was this rabbi speaking on why men needed to feel needed. And I'll actually insert the clip. But the point is I just thought it was interesting how Proper Care Feeding Husbands, Men Are From Mars, this rabbi that I don't even know, we're all saying the same thing, and not always, but usually when the same thing gets repeated from different sources that are not necessarily connected, it's usually an indication that some sort of universal truth is being tapped into. And I think, and I'm gonna just go ahead and include the clip here.
All human beings need to feel needed, men more so than women, because men can't seem to justify their own existence. So unless they're needed, useful, productive, making a difference, they can't tolerate their own being. A man, when he gets married, needs to know that he is useful, necessary, important, that he is needed. So the worst thing a wife can say to her husband is, never mind, I'll do it myself. Anything the husband offers, accept it graciously, give him credit for it, even if it's not exactly what you need from him. But if you accept what he's giving, then you can move him to what you really need from him. But if you reject what he's giving, he'll quit. You emasculate him.
Also in this chapter, the author was talking about the dynamic between men giving and women giving too much. There is this kind of knee-jerk reaction that women can have that if a man, and more specifically, if a husband does not do what you think he should do, then the knee-jerk response is to step in and do the thing that needs to be done. The author appears to be warning against this approach to marriage because he reasons that there is a way that a wife can do that so often that she puts herself in a position where she is giving more and more and more and more. And she gets to a place where she is, in fact, and even objectively speaking, giving too much. And there is only an amount of time that a woman can give too much of a man before she succumbs to resentment, which can over time be a death sentence to a relationship and to a marriage more specifically. He was noting in here that a lot of married women will get to the point where they have just given so much that they get to a point where like, I'm giving too much and now I'm giving up on the relationship. And I thought it was interesting that he noted that while she may be in fact giving too much and the man may not be giving enough, he notices that women will oftentimes fail to recognize how they put themselves in that position by being so quick to jump in and do what the man ought to have been doing all along. And so I thought that was a good takeaway, that it can be things in a small notion, and it can be things of a bigger capacity, where if you feel as though the husband is not doing what he ought to do, fight that knee-jerk response to do it. There may be some things where you may be able to have some flexibility, right? There's no Bible verse that says that a man should take out the trash. But let's say you and your husband have just come to an understanding that you'll handle, as a housewife and as a homemaker, you'll handle all of the other chores, but with the trash, that's kind of like his domain. If your husband isn't taking out the trash as quickly as you'd like him to, be slow to start taking over the taking out the trash, because you may find that what you're doing initially out of frustration may in the long term become a part of your a permanent fixture on your to-do list. Now, taking out the trash is a small thing, but what happens when we're talking about things of a much larger magnitude? Let's say over here on these parts of the internet, and let me not speak for the masses, I'll speak for myself. I believe that it is the man's biblical responsibility to provide for his household. And so let's say a woman finds herself in a position where she allows a man to not be the provider, but instead to take on his role of being the provider for the family. And the understanding is that, it'll only be for a short time. It'll only be on a temporary basis. It's very easy for a temporary reversing of roles, because either he cannot or will not fulfill that role, to become a long-term permanent aspect of your role in the relationship. And I think a lot of women, wives, can sometimes do that to themselves, where the man rightly has roles and responsibilities that have been assigned to him, but for whatever reason, because he is failing to do it, she is jumping in and in her mind helping him, but in actuality usurping his roles and responsibilities. And in the end, she finds herself permanently carrying out that role. And then when all is said and done, she's very upset and resentful and bitter that she has had to carry more weight than was really hers to carry. And while he is responsible, he being the husband, is responsible for not pulling his weight, you are responsible for gladly taking that burden on your back when you were not called to do so. And so that's something that I would like to challenge women to do. It can, like I said before, it can be something small like taking out the trash, or it can be something big like providing for the family. I've also heard some women say, well, my husband is very passive at leadership, so if he doesn't do it, then I just jump in and lead and I make the decision. You're making a mistake, because what starts out as just a quick fix to a small problem can very quickly become a permanent dynamic in the relationship. And I have seen women time and time again, because their husbands didn't jump to the position of leadership, or they didn't jump to the position of provider, or they didn't jump to whatever household thing, it might be trash, otherwise, because they're getting frustrated and they're like, if I don't do it, it's not going to get done. Because they adopted that mentality, they ended up taking on roles and responsibilities that they thought was just going to be for that one time, but it changed the dynamic for the relationship for a longer period of time, and then they end up resentful. So in accordance with this book, and just in accordance with what I have observed, I would encourage women to not do that. There may be some things that truly and rightfully and even biblically are on your husband's plate to carry out. And if he fails to do it, leave it undone. Just because he is failing to address his roles does not mean that you need to get out of position, stop playing your roles to start playing his. If he's dropping the ball, let him drop the ball by himself. You stay diligent and consistent and devoted to the work that has been charged to you from the Lord. Stay the course. Whatever he leaves undone that is rightfully his to do, let it stay undone. Be patient. Give the Lord an opportunity to work in the situation. Allow maybe even the pain of the pain of the consequences cause your husband to pick the ball back up. But if you pick up the ball for him after he has dropped it, you may find it difficult to get him to take the ball again. Am I making sense? I hope I am. I think that's something that I'm guilty of too. There have been things where I'm like, well, because he's not doing it the way I want it done, or he's not doing it in the time that I want done, I'm just gonna go do it myself. And what ended up happening is I had another to-do list on my task. I had another item on my task list, and I did it to myself. So I've had to go back and walk back some of those things. So I can attest that this is true. Just because your husband is not doing something does not mean that you need to jump in, because then you're going to end up in a situation where you're giving more than you ought to. He's giving less than he should, and both parties ultimately feel very unfulfilled in the dynamic that has been established. He also went on to say this, and I'm just going to read the sentence. He experiences his partner's fulfillment as if it were his own. He can easily endure any hardship to make her happy because her happiness makes him happy. What this is speaking to is the dynamic that when a man really loves a woman, he makes this slow shift, but a shift nonetheless, where he seeks less to satisfy himself in selfish endeavors, but actually begins to find pleasure in his wife's pleasure. That's why there's that saying, happy wife, happy life. I'm not going to argue whether that's right or wrong, or whether that's what you should strive for or not. But the point remains, a man who loves a woman gets to a point, and I think it's perhaps a work that the Lord does in one of his sons. So I'm assuming that your husband is redeemed and born again. He gives him a change in his heart such that his wife's happiness becomes his own. That's how a husband can be empowered to love and protect his wife, and potentially to give up his life for his wife if it came to that. It's because it's kind of like a work that the Lord does over time. And he's saying that there comes a point in a man's life where just simply satisfying himself just isn't going to cut it. And that's why it becomes important for women to learn how to receive. There is a way that love can make a man right to want to give to the woman that he loves. But if the woman is not also prepared to receive, it can kind of make the process frustrated in a way that is unnecessary. Because if a man attempts to give, and he attempts to give, and he attempts to give, and he attempts to give, and the wife never receives, then it diminishes his desire to continue giving. And that's how we get into these situations where the wife feels like she's giving more and he's giving less. Now, some of the boundaries that can stop a wife from receiving is, he may give, but he didn't give in the time that she wanted. He may give, but he may not give in the way that she wanted. He may give, but it wasn't quite the manner that she wanted. And so he's saying that if a wife can just be a little bit flexible to allow a man to learn how to give to her and receive from him as he is learning. So that might mean, this is a silly example, but you ask him to take out the trash, he doesn't do it immediately, but 10-15 minutes later he does it. Instead of complaining that he didn't take out the trash immediately when you asked, just say thank you that he did eventually get to it. That's a way that you can give a man a little bit of flexibility and grace while he is giving to you, so that he can feel encouraged to give yet more still. But if every time he gives, so like he took out the trash, although it was 10-15 minutes later, he did take out the trash, but he's met instead with your criticism as opposed to your warm receptiveness about it, then he won't want to do it anymore. And he said, so that dynamic can make it so that men don't give. So women, just like men need to be warmed up to give to their wives, women have to learn how to receive. They have to learn how to receive from an imperfect man, from a man who might give clumsily. He might give a little later than you wanted to. He may not give the exact thing that you wanted, but being able to receive a gift graciously encourages him to keep trying, to keep giving. And so I thought that was a good point out for wives. I don't think that it necessarily means that you need to fake it. Like, let's say you wanted something in particular and he got you something else. I think it's okay to say, thank you. There's a way that you can communicate, what I actually prefer is, maybe let's say he got you a blue dress, but you like white dresses. You can still be grateful for the thought. You can be grateful for the fact that he bought you a dress, and you can also communicate to him. And also, you know what? I really love it when I'm able to have a white dress. I really like these kind of colors. There's a way that you can communicate what you actually want while also still receiving graciously from him as he is kind of fumbling his way through figuring out how to best please you. So I thought that was a really good call out, something that I could learn myself. Also, another point that he called out in this chapter that I thought was interesting, I have heard the complaint that husbands do not like wives that are needy. And to be quite honest with you, I was like, what does that even mean? What does it mean to be needy? Before I go into what this author's explanation was, I would like you to go in the comment section, even pause the video if you need to. Go into the comment section and define the difference between needing something and being needy. I'm curious to know where y'all's mind is at, because I didn't know how to think about it either until he explained it. So I'm going to pause for a minute. Go in the comment section, define for me what neediness is versus needing something. I'm just interested in what you guys think. But moving on, the way that he went about describing needing versus being needy is the following. Needing is openly reaching out and asking for support from a man, your husband, in a trusting manner, one that assumes he will do his best. This empowers him. Neediness, however, is desperately needing support because you don't trust that you will get it. It pushes men away and makes them feel rejected and unappreciated. While I think this is a very good working definition, I still felt like we could wrestle with this a little bit more to make it a little bit more plain. Because I 100% understand what he's saying, but I think further explanation would be beneficial. So there's a way that a wife can and should very clearly articulate what she needs from her husband. When you are communicating needs to your husband, now is not the time to expect him to read your mind. If you really loved me, you would know. Okay, we're over that. We're done with that. You need to use your words like we were taught in kindergarten. Use your words and clearly communicate what your needs are to your husband so that there's no guessing. He shouldn't walk away not being entirely clear about what task you need him to accomplish. It should be very clear. And I would say the more brief and the more concise the communication is, the better. Men tend to not respond to being excessively verbose. The more words is not better. The less words, the more concise and the more clear the communication, the better. So let's say you're in a moment where you're really needing help and you're overwhelmed and you're trying to get dinner done and the kids need to be bathed and blah, 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 blah. Consider, what is the priority? If the priority is getting dinner cooked, what one thing can your husband do to help? If the one thing that your husband can do to help is to entertain the children just by either playing a game with them or taking them outside, this is how you communicate to me. I'm feeling really overwhelmed and I need to get dinner done. You could really help me by taking charge of the children. It's a single sentence. It's very clear. It states the problem and you have provided him with a solution. If your communication is not like that, it is going to make the communication unnecessarily difficult in marriage. There are some husbands that are very good in woman talk. They have learned their wives very well, but that usually comes with a lot of years. So if you are early in your marriage, or even if you're not early in your marriage, if you're further along in your marriage and you just want to make things easier for your husband to be able to help you, learn to communicate concisely with precise language, with a clear problem and a solution that can address the problem. That's the best way to help a man. So that's how you communicate what you need. Neediness, on the other hand, is a request that's made in such a way that communicates you assume he cannot accomplish the task. It's something like, let's see if I can come up with an example. We'll use the same one. it's dinner time, the kids haven't been bathed, they're running around crazy, you're trying to get food prepared and ready on the table. Instead of saying, I'm overwhelmed, I need to get dinner on the table, can you please entertain the children so I can get it done? That's a clear statement, problem, solution. The neediness way of communicating that would be, I'm the only one who does any work around here. I need to get dinner done, but I know you're not going to help me. I've got to do everything by myself. I always have to do everything by myself. That is still a request and a cry for help, but it is a request with the assumption that he will fall short and not be able to assist you in the way that you need to be assisted. There's a difference between stating your need and drowning in neediness. And I think that this is a great point out for wives about how to communicate to your husband. Communicate to your husband from the position of, I know he can and will do it. That may not even be true. You might have a husband who still is learning to give. He's a husband in training. Just like you're a receiver in training, he might be a giver in training. So there may be times where he drops the ball and where you may have a vote of confidence that he is able to execute something and he still doesn't do it. And so you feel like disappointment. So I'm not saying don't beat yourself up if you struggle to have that confidence in your voice when you make a request to your husband, because he may have given you reason to not have that confidence. But what we're going to do is we're going to operate from a place of positivity, not wallowing in self-pity and pessimism. We're going to rely on the strength of the Lord, not necessarily what our husbands can and cannot do. And we're going to make requests from a standpoint of faith, first in the Lord, secondly in our husband, as opposed to a request laced with doubt. Even God doesn't like receiving requests from us with doubt. The Lord doesn't like that. Even was it Jesus who said, do not fear, only believe? The Lord likes to receive requests from us laced with faith as opposed to laced with doubt. And in a similar way, not the same way, because your husband is not God. While your husband is your Lord, he's not the Lord, okay? So not in the same exact way, but in a similar way, it's demoralizing when we non-verbally communicate our doubt in our husbands because of the way we ask for his help. So again, I thought this was a gem of a takeaway. Let's operate from a place of stating needs plainly, as opposed to a kind of nagging, doubtful neediness. Does that make sense? Another call out that I wanted to include from the author is he said, I think he was really talking to the men, but it still stood out to me as a woman that I was like, this is important for women to hear. It says, the first step for a man in learning how to give more is to realize that it is okay to make mistakes and it is okay to fail, and that he doesn't have to have all of the answers. Part of the way that a man is going to arrive at that place where he is comfortable making mistakes and comfortable failing while he is doing his best to give, like the way that he'll be able to just keep giving and keep giving and keep giving and keep giving and not be concerned about whether he's doing it perfectly or not, is by and large determined by how the wife responds. So that's where our role comes in. We don't come in by, he don't take out the trash, and as soon as they ask, fine, I'll just take it out myself. It's when he does take out the trash, even if he was 15 minutes late, even if he didn't do it when you asked him to, or when it was clearly overflowing, you, because of the way you respond to the act of him giving anyway, will make him feel more secure, more comfortable to give the best way he knows how in that moment. And as he feels more comfortable, he may experiment with new tactics, new ways, new strategies to give to you. And in that, you will find that your husband is more eager, more willing, and has a better attitude about giving to you in general. But that's by and large determined by how you respond to his giving, which takes me back to our original point. We as wives need to learn how to receive. We need to learn how to receive. I think I said this in an older video. I practice receiving in general. for the purposes of being a good receiver from my husband. So what does that mean? What that means is that when someone postures as if they're gonna hold the door for me, I let them. I don't run to the door because I don't want to be an inconvenience, but I'm also not gonna drag my feet, right, and make them stand there for 10 minutes. But what my point is if someone is nice enough to hold the door, I'll let them hold the door. I'll walk past and I'll always be sure to say thank you for holding the door. I've said this before, sometimes when I'm at the grocery store and things are out of reach, sometimes either the employees or men that are nearby will offer, ma'am, can I please get that for you? The way you practice receiving is, yes, sir, thank you very much. I would appreciate that. You don't just be in the knee-jerk response and be like, no, I got it, because that used to be me. I would clearly need help. I would clearly need to be on the receiving end of help, but just the knee-jerk response was, no, I got it. You have to practice how to receive. And you also have to give your husband room to be able to give to you imperfectly, because just like you, he is a work in progress. He's not going to do everything perfectly. He's not. He's learning. And so the way that a wife can create a safe space for her husband to learn how to give to her well is by having a gentle and quiet spirit, being very gracious towards her husband when he does give, and when he does make a mistake, and when he does fail, maintaining that gentle and quiet spirit, and stiff-arming the temptation to lose your temper, to pop off at the mouth, to start spouting out how he never does anything right and how you always have to do everything. Fight that temptation, because those negative responses, all they do is reinforce for him that he should have never tried. And then we wonder why he doesn't give. So anyway, I thought this was a really interesting chapter. When I was looking over my notes, I was like, oh, this isn't going to be too interesting to talk about. But actually, as I got started, this was really helpful even for me to just review. Again, a recap about understanding what motivates men to give. And that's first being needed. But in order to be a woman who needs, you need to know how to receive. Do we know how to receive? Also, before we can receive, we need to be able to communicate our needs. Do we know how to plainly state our needs, or do we only know how to operate in a capacity of neediness? And when he does give to us, do we have grace? Do we have a gentle and quiet spirit when he doesn't give to us perfectly? These are just things to think about. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Have you struggled with neediness? Have you had to learn how to communicate needs as opposed to being needy? If so, what are some of the ways that you make your needs to your husband known? I gave an example earlier of how to structure a request in a way that's clear and concise, stating the problem, stating a solution. What are some of the ways that you've been able to successfully communicate a need as opposed to being needy to your husband? As always, thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time.